Christian parenting.
This is Chrys and Shellie, and you're listening to Rocking It Grand.
Join us each week as we talk about leading the next generation with faith, purpose, and vision.
Everybody, this is Shellie, and I'm here with my friend Chrys. Chrys, I can't believe we're in season 2 already.
I know it. It's just speeding by, and we're excited to be here with you. We thought about, at the end of last session, we were like, wait, have we even introduced ourselves?
We just jumped back into it.
We kind of just jumped in, so I think we're going to take just a few minutes to tell you who we are. My name is Chrys Howard, and I have 3 kids, most notably all 3 of them. But my daughter, Corey, was on Duck Dynasty, so some of you might recognize her name, Corey Robertson. And then I have 12 grandkids, 2 bonus grandkids. That means they come from my daughter who remarried, and her husband has 2 children, so we've added those to the crew. And I currently have 3 great-grandchildren and 2 more coming this spring. So lots of exciting things happening around our family. So Shellie, tell them a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, my tribe isn't quite as large as Chris's.
You're working on it, though.
And they may be expanding even now. I'm Shellie Tomlinson, and I have 2 children that are married to 2 wonderful young people, and they have given me 6 grandchildren.
That's
so
right.
So I'm not in the great-grands yet, so we are right now spoiling 6 grandchildren just as much as we can.
Now, for many, many years, you had the fabulous 5. Is that what you called them?
I did. I called those
then you had a new
grandchildren.
little surprise one that came in.
Yes. So Kennedy Lee added number 6, and we call them the Super 6 now.
Super 6. I love that.
And
yes.
they are just my heart, just like yours are. It doesn't matter. You know, I wrote Chrys on the blog a while back, and I just think this is a great place to say this because you and I do. That's a lot of grandchildren between the 2 of us here at Rocking It Grand. But you know what is so important to me? Is for that parent or that grandparent out there that is not part of a large family, that is not parenting, 5 kids, 6, or, grandparenting a dozen, but maybe they have that one child or that one grandchild, and to realize how important their role is and that it is no less important than the person that is coming to you from a large family. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, I totally agree. And, even if you have one grandchild at this point, they tend to multiply. That's what generations will do.
Right.
My mom recently was on Sadie, my granddaughter Sadie Robertson's podcast. If you get a chance to listen to that, it's precious.
And how did they do that? Tell them how to do that.
They can go to Sadie's podcast. Is called Whoa, That's Good podcast. So just look, however you listen to podcasts, type in Whoa, That's Good, and you'll see the one with Mama Joe. And my mom is 89, and so she had some, as Sadie says it, some gold nuggets in there of just amazing wisdom. And so she was, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, she was, I was thinking, what were we saying? Okay, we're saying how many, I think she asked Mom how many grandkids, and Mom said a number, and then she had to go back and think, wait, no, I have way more.
That's the wrong number.
I have way more than that.
You know what I think they would also enjoy, Chrys, when you point them towards listening to the podcast, to Sadie's Whoa, That's Good podcast, which I love that name. It sounds so Sadie. But they would also enjoy the visual aspect of seeing your mom. So y'all could also go to YouTube.
That's right.
And search for Whoa, That's Good podcast, and you would get to see Sadie interview her great-grandmother.
Yeah, what a blessing that is. I was thinking about that as I was writing that up for other people, that this is a great-granddaughter interviewing a grandmother. That probably hasn't happened that many times in this world. If ever.
Absolutely. And maybe informally, but how many times has it been recorded? I just do not know if that was not maybe a first. But I think it's so important, the things that Mama Joe had to say.
Yes.
And so I want y'all to go and listen to that. But we have some things to say today, Chrys.
We do. And wait, we wanted to also point you guys to our website, which we do have new blogs go up probably 3 times a week.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned
Recipes and
that.
information, and we have things for young moms, new moms, grandmothers. There's just all kinds of stuff on that, and it's called Rockin' It Grand, just like our show's called. So
Absolutely.
check that out. Also, our Instagram page, Rockin' It Grand. We'd love to have you
Facebook page,
join
Rockin' It
us
Grand.
there.
Join us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Continue the conversation.
Right.
But speaking of having things to say today, Chrys,
Right.
you brought a topic to the table that I cannot wait to get into, and it's about fear. Now, why did you think that this is a topic we want to address today?
Well, I think this is, of course, like many of the things that we want to talk about, it's timely because there's so much going on in the world that's to make us fearful. I mean, it's out there. It's everywhere. It's a pandemic. It's a national political uprisings. It's a job loss. There's just so many things. And so that how to handle fear and overcome fear actually needs to start younger, way before the big things happen. And I was talking to Shellie before we even started the podcast about our sweet Sadie. Sadie has even written a book called Live Fearless, because what we didn't know as a child, she was afraid of more things that we as the adults in the room did not know. Now, there's a kind of a mixed bag with that. Sometimes that's good because you'll operate without giving in to that. Because I remember times when Sadie would express a little concern about something, a little fear, and I would brush it off with, you're going to be fine. You're going to do great. You've got this, that kind of a thing, which I think is totally good. But then we also want to acknowledge the fear that she had and help her work through those kinds of things as she got older. It is what we did and what she learned to do. But mainly what happened for her is the same thing that happened for me, because I was a fearful child. My mom said I had more homework papers with teardrops on it because I was like afraid that I wasn't doing the right thing, wasn't doing the right way. I was just a kind of a scared little kid. And I came across that verse that says that God did not create us with a spirit of fear, but with a spirit of power. And Sadie did the same thing. She eventually had to walk that out herself in her own brain, how to handle fears.
And it's such a timely topic because fear has gripped so many in our nation, in the times that we're living in that are so unstable. We need to not live with fear. We're supposed to be, I tell my believing brothers and sisters constantly, we're supposed to be walking through this thing differently.
That's right.
The pandemic differently, the political turmoil differently. We're supposed to be setting an example of someone that's not living in that fear. And so we need the reminders.
That's right.
That we have not been given a spirit of fear. And so we bring these reminders to our audience today to talk about the fact that what we know, we're not given that. But Chrys and I really like to put verbs to things and really give you concrete ways to walk out of that fear. It's one thing, Chrys, just to tell the audience and those that are listening, don't fear. God
That's
says
right.
don't fear. I like and you like to turn that around or to break that down, is what I should say.
And have some action
and help
steps.
them see
That's right.
how
That's
not
right.
to fear. So let's just jump into a few
how
of
for
those.
ourselves and for as we put this idea into our kids' head, help them to overcome fear. And I remember when I was growing up, we did a lot of things that were kind of scary because we grew up in the 50s and 60s, and Shellie 60s and 70s, and we did a lot of crazy things. But one of the things that I did, I was a diving instructor. I swam competitively, and somehow diving was something I enjoyed doing. So I started teaching that in the summers. And it was a great thing to teach because people are afraid to jump off a diving board. So watching that walk out each year taught me a lot of lessons about how to handle fear in my own life, because it wasn't a scary thing for me. Jumping off a diving board was not scary at all. I loved it. But for a lot of people, that's one of the scariest things they can do, second to speaking in front of a crowd, you
Mhm.
know? So I was able to watch this and I learned some lessons that I just kind of jotted down some things that maybe will help all of you guys as it's helped me.
Right. And I love that your first one, I really want to speak to that. I'm reading your notes, Chrys, here that you say that's to start small. One
Right.
thing about learning to overcome fear is to start small. And that might mean approaching a clerk in the store or speaking up in class or at church and just doing that one small step. And I think when you say that, when I was reading those words, I thought back to raising a child that was fearful. So my son
Mhm.
was not. He was able to talk to anyone about anything from the time he could put a sentence together. But my precious daughter, who is now plenty outspoken, but back in the day when she was a little bitty girl, she really was very fearful and shy. And she had a
Mhm.
very hard time making eye contact and talking to someone. So, in applying that principle, what I did with Jessica, I would tell her before we walked in the church doors, that people were going to speak to her and that I required her to have a small response, Chrys.
Yep.
I didn't expect her to look at them and carry on a full conversation the way her brother did. And so I excused her from that, but I wouldn't let her remain in that place of fear because
Mhm.
I made her respond with a small step by saying, when Mr. Haley, just one of these wonderful men that we love, that was kind of a lot for kids, because he would just
Right.
come at them and hug and make a big deal. And so I would say, Jessica, Mr. Haley's going to meet you at the door. You have to look at him and say good morning or say
Right.
hello. Make eye contact and say hello
Yep.
and smile. Well, she could do that. If
Yep.
she felt like she didn't have to answer his questions, she didn't have to have a conversation, she felt comfortable. So when we're dealing with children that are fearful, it's so important to give them a manageable way to handle their fear, something that they can do like that, so that
Right.
she was prepared for that moment. She walked in knowing that if she just looked at him, made eye contact and smiled, that her mother was going to be pleased. Check, she did it, and it relieved her tension before she walked through the door.
I love that so much because this is all part of training. We talk about training, discipling, that's what discipline is, our children, so that they are able to walk in the world and do the great things that God has designed for them. And my mother was like that too, just like you. My mom was a pro at that,
Mm-hmm.
at looking at me and seeing that I was extremely shy and what could I do, some little steps.
Yeah.
And she did things similar to that. She would help me know what I had to say. They insisted, my parents, that we all look people in the eye.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge thing. And it used to be a big thing that
And it's a character
you learn
skill
to.
that we really need to be
That's
talking
right.
about today.
That's
It's so
right.
important to look someone
Hmm.
in the eye when you speak.
Yeah, shake their hands, look
Mm-hmm.
people in the eye. And so it's a small step, but it leads to big results.
Absolutely.
Then the
Absolutely.
next thing I said was to try something new each week. And I think back again to that diving analogy. Starting small, I would oftentimes have kids sit on the end of the board and just kind of roll in, because we're
Mm-hmm.
just getting that feel of going off the board like that. But then each week adding something to that, just one little thing
Yeah.
that adds to that. And I'm talking about this kind of when you're working with yourself, like you've got some fears to overcome, you've got some things. And so you're going to start small and then you're going to add that something each week that I can do. Maybe I'm fearful of speaking in front of a crowd, so I always sit on the back row. I was like that. I didn't want the teacher to call on me, whatever. Well, maybe you move up a
Mm-hmm.
few rows. Maybe you actually raise your hand and have a comment, one
Mm-hmm.
comment, just do something each week that challenges you to get out of that fearful spot and move into that spot that, God really has designed for you to be.
And I love the fact that your mom helped you that same way in giving you small steps, because one thing we really want to guard against as parents and grandparents, friends, is making that child feel like she is less than the other one who doesn't have a problem
That's
speaking.
right.
Because
right.
that is the wrong approach. And so I didn't want Jessica to feel like, well, you have a character flaw because you don't want
That's
to, speak in public or you don't want to engage. Instead, just giving her that confidence that God made you this way.
That's right.
And this is a
Yeah.
very wonderful way for you to be made. But now, how can we develop skills that are going to help us, later
Because
in
I
life?
had a very confident, outspoken older sister who was a year older than me.
I adore that girl.
I know, and she's precious and done so many amazing things in an adult. And we both say we both have kind of ended up in the same place, starting out at totally different
Right.
places. But again, I credit that to a mom who saw that we were different,
Mm-hmm.
but to get us to be able to use our talents and
And your
things that
strengths.
God's given us, we're
Yeah.
going to have a little different approach.
I
So
like
they
it.
did.
Another thing that you want us to be aware of, and this is so important, is exercising mindfulness. That when that fear creeps into our head, that we recognize it. And instead of just trying to tamp it down, that we recognize it, we name it.
Right.
And realize what's going on. That is so important because so many times our immediate reaction might just be no, because we're just scared. Just no, right?
Right.
When something new is approaching us or a new opportunity comes to us, that we just say no, and then we miss out on so much. So I love exercising that mindfulness to recognize that this fear has just came up, and what am I going to do with it?
Sadie tells the story when she speaks a lot about when she was asked to be on Dancing with the Stars, and she told him no when all of us were saying, Sadie, yes, you've got to do this. This is amazing. You've been given this opportunity. But no.
Yeah.
And one day, her younger sister at the time, Bella, who's now 18, Bella was 12, went to lunch with her and said these words, Sadie, is that you speaking or is that fear? And Sadie had to realize she was letting fear answer for her instead of herself answering. And that's what I think we all have to ask ourselves. Where is this coming from? Is this coming from, maybe they ask you to teach a class at church, lead a class, and you say, no, I'm too busy. And then you have to sit back and say, wait, why did I say that?
And if you do not exercise that mindfulness of
Right.
realizing what you're doing, then you don't give the Lord an opportunity to come in that moment and
That's
to help
right.
you. Because if you just say no, then you have shut the door. But if you can realize that the fear is there, and then you turn to the Lord and you say, I'm really fearful about this. Is this something that I should do, and help me do it? And how can I do it?
Yeah.
Then you invite the Lord into that moment, and that's where it's life-changing.
I've always said the things that I've done that are outside of my box are the things that I really know God is stepping into.
Mhm.
Because in my own strength and power, I couldn't have done it. But because I was able to do this and say, okay, fear is keeping me from teaching this class or directing this camp or any of those things that I've done, fear would keep me from it, but God will let me keep going. And he did.
And how exciting is that?
It's
I often
so
say
exciting.
that, we want other people to, we want them to see Christ.
Right.
But what is most important is that we see Christ doing those things in us.
Exactly.
Because when we see Christ moving in us, so when we give him that opportunity by inviting him into that moment, and then we see that, like your example, now you can teach at camp or, whatever. When you invite him into that moment and he changes it, there's your witness. There's your
right.
testimony. Now you
right.
can show Christ to other people, but only really after you've seen
That's
Christ
right.
in yourself.
Because this is what it all boils down to, and we really weren't going this direction, but I've got to say it. Nobody's story is their story. Everybody's story is God's story.
God's story.
And when it can point to him, then we've got a story.
Yeah.
Then we've got a story.
Then we've got a story. Oh, that
Okay.
sounds like a book table. Then you
That
got a
does.
story. Everything's a
I
book
love
title to
that.
Chrys and I. But talk to me a little bit
Okay.
about this next one,
You know,
because
this-
I
I
act
know.
like you're someone else. I can't wait to hear you speak to
Act
this.
like you're somebody else. Okay, that sounds kind of funny.
It does, because we often
you
say,
wanna
like, be yourself.
Be yourself.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you can't move forward in something, this is for me, I have noticed if I channel my inner mama, my inner Sadie, my inner Corey, my inner teacher at school,
Right.
that woman on the worship team, that lady who spoke at Women of Faith back in those days. Is that what it was called? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Women
think
of
it
Faith?
was.
Yeah. If I channel that and say, okay, I'm going to actually act like she did,
Yeah.
then it's crazy. Now, this is so funny. My daughter Ashley wanted to do a beauty pageant one time in her life.
Yeah.
We didn't do beauty pageants. We were athletes. We did
Right.
sports. She wanted to do it for some crazy reason. So she found one happening in Bastrop. So we went to Bastrop. She'd never done anything like this ever. She got on that stage acted like she'd been in a pageant since she was 3 years old.
Too
After
funny.
she won the thing, she got
Too
off the
funny.
stage, and I was like, Ashley, how are you doing that? And she said, Mom, I just acted like every pageant person I'd ever seen. I just did the same thing they did. And she did. And she won it. That was it. Done.
That is
Never did
great.
another one after
That is
that.
great. Well,
But that's a lesson that now we don't want to act out of jealousy or act out of anything like that. But when we see a role model that is modeling out how God knows you can do, if you just had that fear, we can channel that inner person and do it.
Well, if you see me grinning so big over here, Chrys, it's because I realized that I haven't done that all my life. I just didn't put it in those terms of acting like you're someone else. And for example, I remember the very first day, I had a live radio show for years before I moved to podcasting from my home on my own personal podcast. But I remember that very first day, and they were about to open the mic, and it's me. It's no other host interviewing me. It's me, and I've got to carry this thing. And I remember that being one of those instances where I acted like a talk show host.
That's right.
I didn't feel like one.
I love it.
I was as nervous as I could be. I couldn't imagine what I was going to do, but I acted like I was enjoying myself. And that is one of the big secrets in communication in life is that if you enjoy yourself in something that you're doing, the people around you are more likely to enjoy yourself. And you can apply that to public speaking, to a podcast, to anything, a child that's listening that's got to give a presentation at school. If you can just decide you're going to enjoy it and you project that, then it calms everyone else around you and they brings you on their page. And it segues perfectly into your next point where you say to ask yourself when that fear hits, what's the worst thing that can happen? Because I would think about that, those first few shows, because that fear didn't go away, Chrys. It wasn't like, and then after that, I was so terribly comfortable on air. No, that's not the end of the story. The next show, I felt the same way. But I would think, if I do not do a terribly great job today, I'm going to go out and get in my car and the world's still going to be turning. I'm going to go have dinner with my husband and my kids are still fine. You just have to get beyond that moment and realize that it's not about you.
That's right.
Do what you can do your best. And what's the worst thing that can happen?
And then ask yourself, what's the best thing?
Oh, so good.
And most of the time, the best thing outweighs all those worst things. Okay, for you, the best thing that could happen is you would end up with a radio show for 10 years that blessed the lives of a lot of people. Okay, that outweighs the fact that you may have fumbled a few words on that first thing. Exactly. So when you ask yourself that, then it gives us that strength to say, okay, I can do this.
Yeah, fumbled a few words would be an understatement, but we'll move on.
Okay. And then, that goes right into this last thing. Recognize that failures and mistakes are not the end. Often they are the beginning.
So good.
You just got to pick yourself up after you do something wrong, learn from experience, and then you are the better person. And back to the very beginning of our diving analogies, I would watch those kids just sit on the edge and barely throw themselves off the end to the end of our 6 weeks of lesson, just confidently flying off of the end of that diving board and it being the best thing they've ever done. And they will do that the rest of their lives. They enjoy that. And so that's what we have to do is we have to just pick ourselves up when we fumbled a few words, when we didn't do something right, and just keep going.
And enjoy it. And I've got to tell you one funny story about that first show now, because you and I love a good story. Yeah. So that first day, live radio, and I have a sound man, and something happened to their tower, and he had to leave. So at this point in my life, I have never used a mixer board. I don't know anything about all this equipment around me. Chrys, I could not even go to commercial. It was just me and an open mic.
That's hilarious.
Couldn't have my guest on. It was just me. And so, as you can imagine, it was sad radio. It was pitiful. I just talking. I mean, had I been able to play a song, I would have played Free Fallin', because that's what I was doing, just free falling.
You could have sung it.
I could do nothing. I endured an
Yeah.
hour of that.
Wow.
And when the show was over, because their automation kicked on,
Right,
I didn't
yeah.
even tell people bye, Chris. I didn't even tell them bye. Their automation kicked on, and I was off. And I was humiliated, just shamed. And I had to make a stop a few blocks over to give someone an item for a celebrity auction that I was going to be a part of. And when I walked in this room, I heard the same channel going over their intercom,
Oh, yeah.
and the 3 people at the receptionist desk were trying their hardest not to laugh as they were trying to
'Cause
make
they
eye
knew.
contact with me
Oh,
and
wow.
without laughing. And so once I was speaking to them, and then once I recognized that station, I said, "Y'all heard that, didn't you?" And they said, "Yes, we did." And then we all had a great laugh
Right.
together.
Yeah,
You
there
know,
you go. Then you just move on. Yeah.
moved on. And I lived past it.
Exactly. Well, that's our thoughts today. We hope some of that will help you as you deal with the fears in your life, and particularly as you help your children deal with those fears and grow up to be strong, brave, and courageous young men and women for God.
And these things will be in the show notes. That's important for you to know because Chris and I do a lot of chatting, but we want you to be able to take these and apply them to raising your children. So look for those things in the show notes, and we'll see you next time right here on Rockin' It Grand.